Hey guys, this is tech production class for our video editing class number 2, working with DaVinci Resolve. This is for our class on May 6th, I believe. Yes, got it right. Uh, okay, so we are going to be doing a couple new things this class. So last class, we uh, installed DaVinci Resolve, talked a little bit about the different things, the different parts of DaVinci Resolve, and then we looked at how to import files into DaVinci Resolve, and then how to we took a few files that we had imported, a music file that was going to be our master audio file that we sync all of the other dance files up to, and then and that master track is just an audio track that we're syncing all of the video tracks up to. Then we added a video of Miss Ella dancing to this music, and we used the waveforms in her video's audio track to sync that to help us sync it up to the master audio track, and then we muted her audio so that all we hear is the master audio, or the original track that we're going to want to play for this, because the video audio sounds like this. Because that's what happens when you record through a laptop into Zoom. And the audio that we want to use, and really this is just a taste of what we've done so far and how it sounds, but this is the full quality audio that we're using. Immensely well. Okay, so now we are going to import a new file, and we're going to sync up a second video to this, and then look at how to kind of manipulate the pictures in file, or in our project, to make them fit in different size frames and fit around each other, how to change the dimensions, kind of using some of the tools that we looked at yesterday, the transform tool, the what's it called? The crop tool. Those are the two main ones we're going to be using right now. Okay. So, but before we do any of that, here's a fun thing that I just learned when I started trying to record this class. So, if you look at our tracks, our official GGG opener, .mp4, this is on the Video 1 track, and it's linked with its audio file in the Audio 1 track. Now look at what happens when I try and move this into Video 2. It completely covers up, the audio moves down and covers up our main audio that we're trying to use. And if I set that there, listen to what happens. We're back to just the audio from that video. So this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that Video 1 and Audio 1 are completely, that we don't try and load any videos onto them, because that's going to basically overwrite our master audio file. So what I'm doing is moving my audio file onto another track, just move it out of the way, moving my video, my first video file onto track 2, and then I'm moving my master audio file back onto Audio 1. So Audio 1 and Video 1 are going to just remain empty, or Video 1 is going to remain empty. Audio 1 is going to keep our master audio track, so that way we don't accidentally overwrite, and when we add any subsequent videos, after we sync them up, we're going to mute their audio so that all we hear is this wonderful full stereo mixed audio, and not any of the video audio tracks, if that makes sense. Okay, not any of the audio tracks from the video clips that we're adding. So now that we have all of that sorted out, let's add in our next video clip. So this one is going to be Mr. Patrick dancing. Now, I already imported this into my project, but if you remember, we can import by taking our file. Now this will be included in the Google Classroom assignment, so make sure to download this file from that, and then you can just drag it and drop it into our for me, it's in a second display. If you only have one display to work with, it will look a little different than this. But this is because, remember, we, in our last lesson, we went from the default. DaVinci will probably open like this in default every time, but it'll go from the cut window or workspace to the edit workspace, this one right down here. And that divides it into a timeline that we can work with. We have our viewers up here, and I have in a second display my bins and my basically media bay. So I'm going to grab this Patrick opener.mp4. So what I did was I opened up my browser window, just grabbed that MP4 file, dragged it in, and dropped it. You can also go in here. I believe it's Command I or Apple I. Let me see. Import file, import media. Yep, Command I. And that will give you the option to choose a media file or a number of media files to import. Okay, but so I have this. I'm going to drag that. Let me pop this back over to my main display. So I'm going to drag it over and drop it in my video 3 track, or a new track. So that way I'm not overwriting my video of Ella that we already have, and I'm not overwriting the audio that we're keeping separate on that track number 1. All right. Now here, we don't need the viewers so much because we need to line up this video. Before we do that, though, I want to look at something really quickly. So the ordering of videos top to bottom in our timeline is really important in a video editor, especially for ones that function this way. So with DaVinci, with Final Cut, with Premiere, I believe with most video editing softwares, when you stack videos on top of each other in the timeline, you're also stacking them on top of each other visually. So the topmost file will be the frontmost image, if that makes any sense. So right here, both of these videos, the video of Patrick dancing and the video of Ella dancing, you don't see her there, but you might see her here. Well, that's funny. Oh, duh, because she's not there. But so those videos are both taking up the full screen. So what happens is, and they both just happen to record in the same room, so it looks like the same shot. But what happens there is everywhere those videos overlap, the topmost video is going to be the most visible one. Now, or is going to be the visible one. It's going to be visually on top of the other one. So in this case, if both of them are fully opaque, which means that we're seeing all of both of them, neither of them are faded out at all, then we're only going to see our topmost video in any of the portions where they overlap, which in this case is the full screen. You can change that in a number of ways. One way is to go up here. So we have all of a lot of our video effects up here. And if I take the composite, remember we talked about that being the different ways that overlapping videos interact with each other. If I take that opacity and dial it back, you start to see Miss Ella's video fading through. And if it's has 0 opacity, then we don't see it at all. So if we turn that to about 50, now that might take a second. So we see both of them kind of around each other. Now that's a really choppy playback because my computer is trying to record the video of me doing this and trying to process those videos at the same time. So that might get extra choppy for you. But I'm going to bring this back up to 100% opacity because we're not trying to do a layered video. We're trying to do a tiled video. So we have our videos, our different clips side by side, or some, in some of these cases, a lot of them around each other. So we're going to play with a few things in a sec, but that's how the stacking of video clips works. Now, before we do that, we want to get Mr. Patrick's video synced up with our audio file and with Miss Ella's video so that when we eventually play all of this, all of the dancers are synced up as well as we can. In video editing, just like audio editing, our main goal is to make up for any, to make the recordings work as well as they can. But our job is rarely to make up for the performances. So any flexing in time that the performers may do is not us in this case. Okay, so let's unmute Mr. Patrick's audio. And we're going to use these waveforms to help us line it back up. We're also going to listen to make sure that we actually have what we think we have. So if you listen to this track, I'm going to solo Mr. Patrick's video first. So that was the audio ending. Okay, so that's the beginning of the audio. So what we can do is we can shorten this clip, well, not all the way there, but to about here. I'm going to zoom in to make this a little bit easier too. And scroll over here. So we're going to bring this in even further. We can always take it back because, say it with me, this is a non-destructive editing software. So we can shorten as much as we want. We can always get it back. So now that I have this short enough to move, I'm going to bring it forward to about here. Now, look with me. I'm also going to move the playhead up there. So if you look here, can you see where the waveforms somewhat line up? The beginning of this waveform right here in the Patrick opener.mp4 is obviously the start of the music. We want that to line up with our Patrick's teacher G2G opener cut.mp3 so that if both of those music files line up, then most likely the video will line up because that's the music that Patrick is dancing to. That's what he's timing his dancing to. So we're going to nudge the, scoot this over here a little too far. And then I'm going to find out what nudge is. Hey, comma and period. So if you want to move it by one frame at a time, you can hit comma to nudge left and period to nudge right. Nudge. So this looks pretty good. This one, okay, let's double check this first. And I'm going to double check it by raising the volume on Patrick's. Okay, that sounds pretty good. And I'm going to mute Patrick's video. I'm also going to extend his file to the beginning of the project. That way, I'm not worried about accidentally shunting it back to the left and then losing this lineup that I did. And that, we can always kind of get rid of that at the beginning if we want to do a fade in, if we want to shorten the clip. But this helps us just keep it in line. Also, because you can't move any videos or you can't move any clips to start before the beginning of the timeline, because that time before the beginning doesn't exist. But before we get metaphysical, let's look at what happened with Miss Ella's video. So I noticed this while I was working. It looks like the beginning of Miss Ella's audio is before the beginning of the track. I'm going to unmute hers and see if that's what happened. Yep. So you can hear that video or that audio start before the main track's audio. So what I'm going to do is select her audio. I'm going to nudge it to the right using period. And you can see it's moving in small jumps. That's because we're moving one frame at a time. With video, videos work by showing a very fast succession of pictures. Now we're getting like way breaking down what videos are. And my Siri thinks that I'm talking to her. But I'm not, Siri. I'm not talking to you. Okay, so videos work by showing a very quick succession of images, of still images. I can't has talk. So this quick succession of images moving or succeeding after each other quickly enough tricks our eyes into seeing them as movement. And that's how videos work. Now, those still images we call frames. Don't ask me why. It's the word that stuck when they were first making it. So every frame is a still image. And that goes to the next still image. Now, we are operating at, I believe our videos that we're working with are, let's see, how many frames? They're sitting at 25 frames per second. I'm actually going to pop this back over to here. So you can see that info right here in the top right-hand corner of the screen under the metadata. I have the official g2gopener.mp4 selected. This is the codec. This is the audio codec. That's the file format that they're made in. Just like with audio, you can have MP3s or WAV files or all sorts of other things. AAC is one of Apple's lossless files formats. H.264 is a pretty standard video codec. The FPS shows us the frames per second. Now, most current video game consoles operate at 30 FPS. So like your PS4, your Xbox, I was about to say Xbox 360 and date myself, which is funny because I didn't get an Xbox until I was in college. Anyway, but your Xbox One, your PS4, your Switch are all running at 30 FPS. If you have a higher end computer and can afford a decent video card, then you might game at 60 FPS, which is a lot smoother picture, because the more frames per second, the more images that you see in succession, the smoother that movement is going to look, because it has fewer gaps in between each image that you see. So in the span of seeing something move from here to here, if that takes 1 second, then if it's 30 FPS, 30 frames per second, you'll see a succession of 30 images showing that movement. If you have 60 FPS, you're going to see 60 images there. So in between every one of the images that you would see in a 30 FPS, you see another image showing an even more minute, like incremental movement. So it just makes everything flow a lot better. This video that you're watching of me right now is in far less than 60 FPS. And if you're lucky enough to have like a stupidly powerful computer, you might be able to game in like higher than 60 FPS. Like people get up to 120, 140. But that starts to get into like what your monitor can handle, and 147, I think, is like, or 144 144 hertz is like the top end right now, I think. Anyway, that's faster than you can actually appreciate. I've talked about frames per second for more than long enough. Let's get back to our editing. Um, anyway, every time we nudge, it moves, or every time we nudge a frame, it moves one of those frames. And that's why it jumps like that, because there are only so many frames we can move. If we move it less than a frame, the it doesn't really know what to do, because, or if we try to move less than a frame, there's not really anything to do there, because there's nothing in between the two frames. You either have the one frame or you have the next frame. And that's part of why all of the videos that we have in a project conform to the same FPS and the same settings, because the project can't really handle multiple frames per second rates. Otherwise, it would. You don't even really want it to, because the headache of watching a 60 FPS next to a 30 FPS would be awful. Okay, anyway, that's why our nudges move the distance they do. Ha! Remembered why I started that. Okay, so we've nudged Ella's video back into position. Let's extend this. There we go, to fill up the space so that it doesn't accidentally get nudged out of the way again. And let's try watching it. So it sounds right, it looks right. There we go, we are in business. Okay, now for some fun stuff. So we have both of these videos in, we have both of them synced up. Now let's start looking at how we get both of them moving together. By the way, that just automatically saving whenever I move on to something new is such a good habit to get into, because nothing feels worse than having a crash or just accidentally, I don't know, turning something off, having your power go out, or having your laptop battery die because you forgot to plug it in and you couldn't get to your power supply fast enough to save it. That definitely hasn't happened to me before on a number of occasions, but it feels awful if you haven't saved. If you have saved, then you just fix it and then you pull it back up and everything's good. Let's go to a section of this dance where Miss Ella and Mr. Patrick are both on stage. So here, I see Mr. Patrick comes back into view, and Miss Ella is on stage. Oh, and she's leaving. Okay, let's try this. Miss Ella's on stage, and Mr. Patrick's on stage. Wonderful. Okay. So let's look at a couple of the ways where we can have both of them visible at the same time. So one of those things is playing with opacity. If we take Mr. Patrick's video down to 50% opacity, then we can see both of them. I'm going to extend this a little bit so we can see it a little better. Okay, so let's scoot back a little bit so we can see both of them as I scrub. The viewing might be a little difficult. There we go. So we kind of see both of them, but it's not ideal. It's almost like a ghost of Patrick and his room are like dancing in the same space that Ella is. So let's kick that opacity back up to 100. And let's do something else. So I talked about the different tools that we have to affect our video in the viewfinder. The first one we're going to look at is crop. So what crop does is crop allows us to change the outer bounds of our screen. And there are a few different ways you can do it. So all 8 of these white dots will allow us to change the outer bounds of this clip, or this clip's window. Um, there, if this is our picture, we don't want to cut out any of our dancer, any of our primary, I don't know, piece of interest right now. We want to keep all of Mr. Patrick in the video, so we just want to move the outside edges. Now, I could drag both of these in and kind of get it right, or I could hold Option, grab the outside. Nope, can't do that. Let me see if this works. Nope, 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 nope. Ha! I guess none of those work. Cool. Well, in some other programs, you can hold Option and it'll move multiple parts of it at once, or keep it in well, now that's just not working at all. What's going on here? Huh. I am confuzzled. Oh, there we go. All right. Anyway, let me pull this guy in, and then I'm going to pull this guy in. So now we have a smaller patty. And I'm just going to drag this over to kind of center it a little better on him. All right. Now that that is done, I'm going to click here to say I'm done editing that or cropping that. Now here's a fun little thing that we can see. Oh, let's do this first. So after cropping that, I'm going to click transform. Now transform allows us to move, to shrink, to enlarge, to rotate, and to just move a video. So we're going to take this video, or this clip, and move it to the right. So he only takes up about half of the screen. Now this, we're just doing kind of gross movements right now. Gross as in like large and not super dialed in, defined. I'm not doing great with words right now, but we eventually will look at different tools that we can use to make, well, that'll be nice. But different tools that we can use to help us edit a little more finely. Like with this, we can see, yeah, all video frames, nah. Gang viewers, nah. Time code, markers, no, don't need any of that. Okay. Anyway, we've done that. We've made Mr. Patrick a little bit smaller. We've moved him over. Let's click our transform button again. And now we're done transforming him for a bit. By the way, what I just did to change that view is I clicked up here. This is the double view, so this shows me my timeline of my project that I'm working on here. And right next to it, it shows me the timeline of that clip right next to it. So I can see the full quality of that clip. And then over here, I see what I've, after the transformations, the cropping that I've done to it. So I'm going to click here because I'm mostly interested in the timeline. So now let's select Miss Ella's video, and we're going to crop it. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to move it over so that it meets about halfway with Mr. Patrick's. Now this crop is about the size that I want, but it's not centered on Miss Ella like I want. Here's a cool thing you can do with cropping. If you get the size right, but you need to change where its target is, you can drag that window over and center it on Miss Ella. Boom! And now, usually it works, right? Now, my cropping is done. I want to transform and move her over like so. Now, I'll be totally honest, I'm not sure why the crop isn't actually what it should be, but we will figure that out in another episode of Dragon Ball Z. That was one of my favorite shows growing up. Okay, so we've done our transform, we've done our crop, and now we have Miss Ella and Mr. Patrick dancing right next to each other. Now let's look at that and see how that looks. We'll scoot it back a little bit. Heads up, this isn't going to look amazing playing through here because it's trying to process while this is trying to record while you get it, you know. But let's just, I love that expression. Let's take a look at this and see if we even like the two of them being next to each other. And so that's pretty cool. I really like the look of the two of them being right next to each other, dancing together. You can see, especially once it's rendered, you'll be able to see a lot more clearly what they're doing. And it all kind of makes a little more video sense. Now let's talk about something aesthetically that we might want to look at as we're making this video. Now this isn't our final look that we're going for. We have a ton more video clips that we're going to import and that we're going to kind of get into place and get added together to make this video fit and finish off this video. But there we go. But we can actually see, well, that's funny. Oh, I know what happened. Okay, so here's a fun thing. Crop. We're gonna do, let's see. We're going to take our crop back to its full size. Awesome. And we're going to get ourselves back to, there we go, timeline 1. Okay. So what had happened, and I'm going to figure out eventually how exactly that happened, but the crop that I made wasn't a full, just straight up crop. You see how this has a little space outside? So this is going to slowly zoom in or throughout the video to meet that inside crop. Now, what I want to find out is how to change that. I don't want a dynamic zoom on this. I don't want for that to happen. But, yeah, and let's see. That crop, yep, that meets up exactly there. So we're going to do this. We are going to well, for now, I'm going to figure out that next time and have a better answer. But for now, we're going to live with this. So what I was going for is something to look at is the fact that we're just going to treat these like they are exactly what they look like. Look at the lines that we have in these videos. Because this is shot in the same place, we see some very distinctly defined lines in the video that, if they don't match up, are really, really obvious. Especially in such a geometrical room like this. So if we look at these ballet bars, the white wood behind them, the steel I-beams or C-beams back there. The trim up here, especially where the blue turns into white, turns back into uh, all of the different color variations, where the floor meets the wall, all of those things are so obviously the same room, but if they don't match up, it draws your attention and it's just kind of obvious. So we want to make these match a little bit better. So what tools would we use for this? Oh, wow, I am Dora the Exploring this. Hey, what tools do you think we should use? We'll give you a second to try and figure it out. Sorry, I don't have some sort of like catchy song about, I don't know, learning Spanish or something. Did Diego ever really do anything? Anyway, um, so we're going to use a combination of transform and potentially crop to get it back down to the size that we want. So because we could make Miss Ella's video smaller to match up with Mr. Patrick's, because the upper bounds of her lines are higher than Mr. Patrick's. The lower bounds of her lines that are below the median of the video are lower. So that means her entire video is more zoomed in, or more likely because their laptops cameras don't have like mechanical zoom lenses. Her laptop is just further forward than his. But either way, that's a form of zooming. It has a larger or a closer shot. So we want to either zoom her video out so that it gets a little bit smaller and the lines match, or we want to zoom Mr. Patrick's video in, or some mixture of the two. Now, one reason why I want to zoom Mr. Patrick's in to match Miss Ella's is because, well, let's look at this. If we have Miss Ella's video, its upper constraints are the limits of the outer bounds of our timeline, our full project video itself. So if we try to make her a little bit smaller, then we can get to a point where we're about the same as Mr. Patrick's video. And bring her in again. And move it up a little bit. And then out a little bit. So we're here, but do you see all that black down there? We don't want that. We don't want that black space. So instead of doing that, we're going to make these adjustments. This entire video is okay. I'm gonna figure it out at some point what has happened with Miss Ella's video. But in the meantime, we are going to adjust Mr. Patrick's video and zoom it in so that it matches Miss Ella's video. So that way we don't lose any of our usable space in the video. We're not getting to a point where we don't have anything more to stretch out to fill the screen. So we want to zoom him in a little bit. And that top line's matched up, but now the bottom line hasn't. So we're going to bring him down. And we're going to zoom him in a little more. Until, let's try this. That looks pretty spot on. Let's see. Yeah, it's close. It's like a pixel off. But all I have to do is grow a pixel more. And just like that, we are pretty darn matched up. Look at that. So now they no longer meet in the middle. And I want to see no. Oh well. So how do I bring this edge of Mr. Patrick's video back towards the middle of the video? I'm doing it again. Huh? What do you guys think? We'll give you a second to look at the. No. We're going to use the crop to bring this edge of Mr. Patrick's video back over until we hit about center. Now, I'm also going to look up for next time how to get visual guides for where centers are, possibly a grid of thirds, a couple different things that'll just help us kind of composite our image in a really pleasant way. But for right now, look at how much better that looks with the lines of the two videos matching up. Both of them are next to each other. Both dancers are about the same size visually. They take up about the same amount of space in the video. So if we watch them now, well, it is so less distracting. Their videos themselves. I like that little leg move. You can't see my legs. Okay, so let's look at one more thing. So I saved there just out of habit, but good habit to be in. So we're going to look at one more thing really quickly. Now, this is a later tool that we're going to use more, but I want to introduce the idea of this because we're kind of treating these two clips as though they're the only clips in this video. So we want to make them match as well as possible. So they are sharing the screen well, sharing the space well. They are resized so that they match each other pretty much as best as possible. There's a little more fine tuning we could do, but that's for another date. Now, the next thing is these colors don't really look quite the same. Now, we can see that in both of their videos, this left side of the screen is darker than the right side, which means their light source, you can see their primary light source for this video is like up here somewhere, because it's a lot hotter over here and a lot cooler over here and down there. There's not too much we can do with, no, there's a lot we could do with that if we had a lot of time, but we don't. So we're going to look at just a little bit of color correction. Now, the nice thing is we know they're both using the exact same lighting, so that's awesome, or at least close to the same lighting. But we want to do just a little bit more to kind of make them fit really well. Now, oh, where did you go? Oh, that's right. So we're going to go down to Fusion Color. We're going to go exploring because I believe, nope, Fusion is not what I wanted. Aha, Fusion is where we add effects. Color is where, oh, I have a lot of, okay. This is one really, really cool thing about DaVinci Resolve is that we have so many tools when it comes to, and such powerful color correction tools. And it is awesome. I'm going to show you both of my screens. This is my main screen where I have 4 different color wheels to work with: offset, gain, gamma, and lift. These are primaries wheels. We could also look at them as bars, or we could look at them as a log. But in my, and then we have curves that this shows us how much of each color is in each video at, we can get way into this, into the weeds, but you can adjust these colors in really interesting ways. Yeah, it gets crazy. Yeah, curves are kind of fun to play with. Okay, and that's what this is going to take a lot of, is just playing with it. But I'll give you a few ideas of where to start. So this is on the right side, or the this main window, main display. My other display, you can see There's so many chromaticity, waveforms, there's vector scope, there's a parade. These are like super high level color correction tools, and there is no way we are going to get anywhere near more than just scratching the surface with these classes, and you don't want me to. Partially because I haven't done a lot of professional level color grading, so um, I don't have like that level of teaching to do in this. But also, there are entire like college courses that are taught on color grading. And I say college courses because they're like, you could teach that for a year and still have more to do. Like, it's crazy. Um, anyway, we're going to go back to the main display, and we're going to look at what is the most different between these two videos. So here we see, I like to look at the spots that look the same and the spots that look different. So right here, this blue seems almost like it has more yellow in it than the other blue. Now let's see how true that is. So if I click here, this curves level tells me, oh, something. I don't have a lot of practice with DaVinci Resolve, so we're gonna, oh, come on. Nope. No, that's not what I wanted. Although it does give us a lot better image to work with. So if I click on Miss Ella's video, this, well, totally lost where we were, but that's okay. Um, so, hey, this is about it. So, this video, Mr. Patrick's video, seems a little bit more dim. The almost like it's more cream filled, colored, whatever. And Miss Ella's blue looks a little more vibrant. So let's play a little bit with Mr. Patrick's video. That's going to bring us back there. I'll click here. There we go. Oh, about to sneeze. It's going to happen. Oh, and I'm going to try bringing up the... So this is making certain colors a lot more vibrant, especially in the mid-range. Now you can see that a lot of colors become a lot stronger, but the darks don't really change, and the light, like the lows parts, the dark parts don't really change, and the light parts don't really change. So this is just changing the mids of everything. Now, see how that gets kind of more vibrant, but it doesn't really change that issue for us. So I'm going to put it back to where it was. Now I'm going to look a little bit in the higher, the brights, the highs, and see if changing those does anything. So you see that starts to really affect the lighter parts of this video up here, but it's still not the effect that I really want. So I'm going to bring that back down. So really what I want to affect more, if I bring this, actually, if I bring the vibrancy of everything down, and then I pull up, oh, come on, just the blues, what happens then? I have a little bit more blue. Let's try adding everything together again. Pull all of them down. Oh, actually, let's bring them all back up. And we'll select blues. And I'll edit the middle of the blues. That starts to look a little more like Miss Ella's video. But it's a little too blue. So now let's take the yellows and add that just a little bit. It's a little bit closer. I think the blue should come back a little bit. And then I almost want to see what happens if I take the yellows down lower than in Miss Ella's videos. And that starts to get us a lot closer. Now, let's try and take this green out a little bit. So if we take it out a lot, we get some awkward stuff. But you notice what didn't change much is that part of the wall. So I know that moving the greens like that isn't going to be my ticket to success. So now, let me see what happens if I move the reds. Not much to that part of the wall either. So I'm going to set that back. And now let me try moving something a little bit lower. So this is part of the color grading experience as you're still learning it, is figuring out what is what, and how dark is dark, how bright is a highlight, where are the mids in a photo. In this case, this section of the wall right here that I've been trying to match to this color of Miss Ella's, the emphasis on this is, we can see down here for the yellows, which we can pull out a little bit, or we can boost up a little bit. And the blues are right about here. So if we boost this blue a little, that gets a little bit closer. If we boost this blue a little, this lighter blue, gets a little closer. It's still a little different, but we can see that we're a little closer than we were before we started playing with these curves. Now, all of this is super subjective. Color grading is it is as much an art form as anything, but that was like a brief introduction to the idea of color grading and what the tools kind of do. And don't worry if that didn't make much of any sense to you. Part of that was probably my just stream of consciousness. And part of it is the fact that it's really, really complicated. And it takes a lot of ideas and concepts that take a while to learn and a long time to master. Anyway, we're going to go back to the edit screen, make sure everything is saved. And so this week, I want you guys to catch up to here with these videos. Make sure you have Miss Ella's video and Mr. Patrick's video synced up with the original timeline, and play around with trying to get them next to each other dancing. And if you have an idea of another way to arrange them, awesome, try that out. Next week, we're going to load a bunch more videos in. We're going to get them synced up a lot faster than we did with these last ones. And then we're going to start looking at tiling and how to get a bunch of different dancers in around each other, or a bunch of different clips, and start really putting our project together. All right, guys, have a wonderful week. Comment in the Google Classroom assignment that you guys were here. Let me know if you have any questions. You know how to reach me.